Hello everyone, my name is Battlesey, and it is with a heavy heart that I make this video about the current state of Warhammer 3. And I wanted to raise concerns about the game's direction if it continues in this trajectory that it is, as with the release of Shadows of Change, nobody has won, everybody involved has lost. The community, Creative Assembly, included. Let's talk about that and where we are now. So if we were to look at the Steam charts that showcases the player spikes from DLC to DLC, with the release of Champions of Chaos, the game spiked up to over 100,000 players alongside a much needed Champions of Chaos rework, and that was pretty much free inside of that DLC, so it expanded on the already Warriors of Chaos that existed. And so you didn't need to pay any money if you already owned the Warriors of Chaos to actually have access to the rework that they brought through. So you got a lot more bang for your buck than it actually first originally looked like. So it was a cheaper price point, and you also got an entire rework of the faction to a point where they're a really, really awesome faction, and I would recommend playing Warriors of Chaos to anybody. And we can't forget, this is when Immortal Empires released as well, so every single player could now play Karl Franz in the Immortal Empires map, and obviously whatever their favourite legendary lord may be, they have access into the grand scale sandbox map, and they can play whichever faction they like the most, as obviously before this, the only Warhammer 3 related factions were available to be played, and then it opened up the possibilities to everything. And so I think it's slightly deceptive. Obviously the Champions of Chaos, the numbers there, because Immortal Empires also released on this day at the same time, which made it significantly more valuable because there was just so much stuff involved. Immortal Empires was free coming through, and it further proves the point. If you give us content, that is amazing. People will want to play the game. And as part of it, people happily came flocking back to the game because truly, we were offered something far more valuable. We were given a lot more content, a lot more bang for the buck, and it was cheaper than the current DLC. There was way more things that are happening in there, and the core game was in a much better state. So this is something I'm going to touch on a little bit later, but generally speaking, the foundations of Total War is shaky, and we need a dedicated team to get it back to where it was. It needs to be less buggy before you add more things into it. But if you keep adding more content and more content, you'll get to the point where it's unsustainable, and realistically, it'll become too costly for Creative Assembly to actually fix everything, and they'll only focus on putting more content because that's what makes them money. They're a business, they have to think about what makes them money. It's understandable, but if they keep going down this trajectory, and the reason why I said at the beginning of the video, I'm worried. And with that in mind, this leads me to think they sacrifice a lot of goodwill with the community currently to make short-term money to satisfy shareholders, or maybe even cover the cost for hyenas, as some people are more than happy to pay the price, whatever it may be, to get more content into the game. And keep in mind, in these situations, they only have to sell half as much to make the same amount of money if you were to compare this DLC to the likes of the Champions of Chaos. Next up now we have the Chaos Dwarfs, which peaked around 74,000 players, 230 days after the previous peak of 102,000. Obviously this is a decline, but keep in mind there was the Immortal Empires and everything else around that at the same time as well. But we've got to keep in mind, although the Chaos Dwarf campaign was extremely good, it is the start of when CA is positioning the DLC at a massively increased price. And due to inflation and the cost of living increases around the world, it's becoming more unrealistic, and it will alienate some of the player base, which is a shame because some of these players might have been supporting Creative Assembly since Rome Total War days, but just like myself. And I quickly want to discuss the value proposition that the Chaos Dwarves brought in because it's the exact same price as the Shadows of Change. The Chaos Dwarves are a dedicated faction, and as we know, with Mother Ashtanka, you cannot recruit dedicated lords. Chaos Dwarves have their own dedicated lords. It would be amazing to see a Hag Lord for the Shadows of Change, for Mother Ashtanka specifically, because it doesn't make sense that a Boyar is running around with a ton of spooters. That is not what his job should be. A Hag Lord should be taking control of that and should be leading their armies accordingly. And it must be said, it devalues Mother Ashtanka's identity massively in the campaign because she doesn't have dedicated lords to facilitate her vibe, and instead just run around with a ton of ambushers, because that's pretty much all you'll want to do now. Alongside this, we have over 26 new units, in comparison to the 11, I believe, is in the Shadows of Change DLC, so less than half of the units that will exist here, and as we see, we have 26 units here that have and cover all bases, which be it the melee lords, as you can melee heroes, excuse me. We have the range heroes and we have the mage heroes. So we have a lot of value, more fundamental value coming through. And also, I don't really see this talked about enough, but the socio-dynamics of what the Chaos Dwarves implemented within this region of the map, they changed a lot of dynamics. As part of the greenskins mechanic that they have if they loot and occupy a settlement, it has a chance not to reduce the tier of it. So I made a video as Grimgore taking Zana Grund on turn 2. And you can do it, a variance of other things like Scarsic can come over here and you can take this turn 7, I believe, at tier 5. It changes the dynamics of the game drastically when you're putting in new factions instead of just putting in additives towards factions that already exist. Because like I mentioned, that this is a grand scale buff for a lot of other, older factions. They are getting love as part of other things coming into the game. So it's an unintended, way of doing it, but other things get a lot of love as part of it. So in comparison to doing additives to the game, you're adding in a lot of value proposition to the rest of the game, because I think the Chaos Dwarves is a fantastic DLC, but like we mentioned before, the price point is just a little bit crazy, and it will alienate some of the player base. Now let's talk about the Shadows of Change. The player base currently today is sitting at roughly 34,000, which is less than half of the previous DLC at the same price point, and throughout the video we've seen a trend of more content is typically more players. And to put it lightly, the Shadows of Change is lacking in that respect. We shouldn't be getting less content for the same price. And just to quickly discuss Powercreep, a lot of the new units and lords, it is very apparent that they are far superior than a lot of other things that are within the game, such as the Changeling comparing to Kairos. In nearly every way he is better because he can change his form to suit any composition or any army he's fighting, alongside Yuan Bo. He's vastly stronger than the rest of the Cathayan lords, and honestly, in truth, I have zero issues with things coming out that are overpowered. It gives a lot of life to the game, it gives a lot of replayability, but the kicker then lands. If you do not then revisit older factions and give them the same amount of love and attention that they deserve and need, that is where the problem comes, because they'll stick out like a sore thumb and they'll be vastly more overpowered or underpowered. And that is where we need to try and revisit and ensure that other factions also get the love and attention that they deserve. Now regarding the Steam reviews, the game in general has got a 87% dislike from the last 30 days of people giving it a overwhelmingly negative review. It went from being overwhelmingly positive, I believe, to now mixed. People are speaking, and this is a direct reflection of the way the community is feeling and the sentiment that people have. And this is the catalyst, and this is ammunition Creative Assembly should use to be better. I just want to mention as well that the direct success of the game is a correlation between creators doing well as well. Viewership will always go up once people are excited about certain DLCs. For example, the Chaos Dwarves to now, my viewership in the Chaos Dwarves was up about 80% than it is now. So I have 80% less viewers than I did when it comes to the Chaos Dwarves. And that's not me just trying to say that as to try and farm pity or whatever. And that is just the reality of the situation. So if you do have your favorite creators, I would 100% recommend you rally behind them. For the people that watch me personally, I was made redundant as of 2 days ago. So I'm going to be making myself a full-time content creator. And I'm very excited and very scared at the same time. And so I appreciate all the people that watch the videos, and I appreciate the support as always. One thing I want to mention, all the people that I've ever spoken to at Creative Assembly have been absolutely lovely, including the developers, the implementer team, and the social team. Have all been a great bunch of people, and I appreciate all their efforts in the bad hand that they've been dealt currently. The main factor that is currently happening is there's someone high up above in Creative Assembly, or some shareholders that are specifically making demands, and it is exceptionally tone deaf and out of touch with what we actually want as a community. And it's a shame seeing them run this to the ground without having any sort of thought or concern for anyone that is actually playing their games and supporting them. So hopefully this will be a catalyst that they will utilize and make change for the better, because it definitely feels out of touch when they release statements that they have done in recent times. To conclude, less is not more, and paying more money for less content is not sustainable for Warhammer 3. It is the last of the series, and it should be going out with a bang. I've had so many positive memories, and I want CA to succeed, but going down this path is not how they should do it. Actionable items that I can see them doing is dedicated teams to fix some bugs, because that will fix a lot of the core of the problems. If you add on more and more to the game, if you do not fix all the bugs that exist, your overall user experience will be diminished, and it will be absolutely miserable to play the game, even if you have a ton of cool things, because it doesn't matter if there's other cool things in there if you can't actually play the game and it's not playable. More resources to the engineering and get them more help. Just in general, get more engineers on the project would be amazing to see. And if they're increasing the prices for whatever reason, they need to ensure that it's actually worth it. I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And if you want to see me live, I will be live on Twitch right as this video goes out. Thank you so very much, guys.